Welcome, and thank you for joining us for Live at Your Table. Before we get started with our discussion, we would like to share some housekeeping items to keep in mind. All audience members are on listen-only mode, which means you are muted. We will be monitoring audience engagement on the dashboard and do encourage you to participate by using the question pane. Please be sure to send in your questions as they come to mind. Please note this webinar is being recorded and will be available online in the coming week. Now, without further delay, let me introduce Rudy Mick, who is the founder of the Mick Companies. Thank you, Rudy, for being with us today. Please take it away.
You're so welcome. Thanks so much. I appreciate it, Renee. Hi, everybody. I appreciate you making the time to focus with me on hiring as a system. The goal of this session is to build retention and performance and profit, all the more in these challenging times. That said, just a tiny bit about me and my company. I've been building restaurants for over 30 years. I'm a restaurant owner. We also do management contracting of restaurants. So everything we're going to talk about in the next 45 minutes, everything I'm going to share with you is not theory. It's actually stuff that I've worked with, we've installed, and have working with our client systems, not only in the United States, but in 6 countries around the world. Everything I'm going to share with you this afternoon works. Everything is about choice. So that said, it looks like we've got a relatively small audience today. So I want to actually invite engagement and interaction. Please feel like you need not wait till the end to ask questions. If something pops up, put it in chat, and Renee will get those questions to me. So hiring as a system. Headline 1, great hiring and the retention that comes from it is more about us than them. I wish it wasn't the case. It's my great wish that as owners, as managers, we could just wish excellence to happen. Sadly, that's not the case. I would say that there are great people out there. We just need to find them, and even more so, make it easy for them to find us. The habit in the industry. See if any of this resonates for you. We hire at the last minute. We wait until somebody gives their notice, or worse, quits and walks out the door, or is terminated and walks out the door, and then we start interviewing. That sets up setting and waiting for a pulse. Anybody that walks in, as long if they're warm-bodied and have a pulse, we'll hire them. That's a setup for lack of performance. Another habit is that we count on training from our competitors. Somebody walks in the door and they used to work at Chili's or Fridays or Jimmy John's or Subway, whatever it might be. They come out of culinary school, they think they're a chef, but they're a line cook, right? Whatever that training is, how do we build on it rather than rely on the training and that habit? So we'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. Another habit is that we rely on common sense. It's obvious. You've gotten to be a manager, you're an owner of a company. You didn't get there by accident, you worked hard. The expectation of, well, duh, it's common sense, get over it. My motto nowadays is there is no common sense. So get over that concept. Another habit is that we're looking for what I'll call average performance, whatever I can get from the other guys that walk in the door if they've had any training. All of these bullets, all 5 of these things, lead us to high turnover. The industry average is about 95%. In years past, it's well over 100%. I want to share with you that everything I'm going to talk to you about leads us on average in our own restaurants and with our clients to an average turnover of less than 22%. So even in rough times, how do we get low turnover? It's a direct outcome of the way we interview and hire. So habit number one, if these two circles represent the average interview we take, notice that the habit, at least that I've seen for literally thousands of times, is that the interviewer actually takes the great majority of the space and gives away all the answers. I'm going to invite you and give you some techniques where the interview is offering short, succinct questions or requests. Please say more. Please tell me about a time you were challenged and the implications of your learning to that. Stop. Right? So that we are very succinct in our questions, which gives us a much bigger opportunity to hear from the applicant. That said, I want to also, and in support of the habits that we've got, what motivates work? First and foremost, I'm just looking for a job. When you and I are looking, we wait for to the last minute to interview. I'm typically going to find that person that's just looking for a job. I just need something to get paid. COVID's a great example of this. Unfortunately, with a huge amount of restaurants that are closed, with a huge amount of turnover or excuse me, not turnover, but unemployment, anybody's looking for work. The question is, are they the right fit for me? Have I defined excellence at a high enough level that I understand why you are looking? So one motivator is I just need to get paid. Another is that tied directly to I just need a job, I'll take anything, is that I'm working in an environment where typically we as the managers or owners are more threatening than inspiring. That is, I'm going to coach to the negative. I'm going to slap your hands. I'm going to tell you, no, don't do that or stop. And I put up with that for a certain period of time. Here's the interesting piece that we know for a fact, and the data is irrefutable. A+ players, people that are going to take initiative, people that are going to do and go the extra mile, don't stay very long in a threatening environment where they're getting negative feedback. That leaves us to the most opportune area, which is I work because I'm inspired. And the irony here is that inspired workers will work for free. Clearly, we need to pay them. Clearly, we need to do the right thing with them. However, if I can find folks that are ready to be inspired, that is actually my go-to. So the question is, how do I find those inspired people? I want to suggest, we're going to stay in kind of broad brushstrokes here and then hammer down and get tighter and tighter. Hiring is a brand experience. We can put up a sign, most of us, that if the habit is wait to the last minute, a sign goes up in the window, or maybe I post on Craigslist or some similar thing, help wanted, or now hiring line cooks, now hiring hosts. Guess what? If that's the ad I put up, that's likely what I'm going to get at best. So the opportunity is, instead of help wanted, share my story. What are our values? What's our culture like? What is the purpose? You and I are one of the good pieces, effective opportunities that COVID has created is a picture that restaurant folks are essential workers. What if every team member we had, including us on the call, are essential workers? What does that mean? This goes back to the essence and alliance of the very word restaurant. What is the root? Restaurant actually translates to the root of the word is a place one goes to be restored. Restaurateur literally translates to restorer of soul. What if my dishwasher was a restorer of soul? I can't restore anybody if the plates aren't clean, if the silverware is not clean, etc. If the carryout bag isn't buttoned up and stapled or whatever it is, however we're closing it, the food's hot, the food's cold. What if my story is that we're on purpose, we're active participants, we're active partners in our neighborhood, etc. So there's real opportunity here. I'm gonna, a way to share this is, again, if hiring is a brand experience, forget common sense, build on the competitor's training, not depending on your own, not depending on their training, but actually saying, okay, it's great that you worked for 6 months at Subway or wherever it was that you worked. This is the way we do it. This is, if you're coming from Payway or whatever the company is, Starbucks, whatever it might be, this is the way we do it, and we build on the competitor training. Another active step for this is to define good job and from entry to exit. By this I mean with every position in the restaurant, in the business, from opening the door to closing the door, from front of the house to the heart of the house, any job in the kitchen. What does, we usually walk around with compliments or criticism. Hey, you're not doing a good job, or you are doing a good job. Well, wait, what actually is good job? What does it mean? Which leads us to track behavior versus, and share behaviors versus giving compliments and criticism. So 3 examples of this are the concept of, wow, good attitude, right? How many times a day or a week do you say that to your team or say that to yourself about somebody on your team? When we're hiring, what I want to look for is folks with a good attitude. It's all the more easy to find them and find good attitude if I've actually defined the behaviors of good attitude. So what is good attitude? Direct eye contact, maybe. A smile that's authentic. Walking in and greeting, in an interview, here's a hand offered. We will look and talk to an applicant in the first second they walk in the door from 20 feet away. Are they making eye contact? In COVID, with social distancing, right? Are they awake enough to have a mask on? Are they conscientious enough to perhaps pull the mask down but still stay socially distanced? But I can see their smile, I can see them maintaining eye contact, and they're saying, hey, I'm looking around for work, but your restaurant, Rudy's Place, is the place I want to work, as opposed to, hey, dude, I'm just looking for a job. The flip side is, well, what's bad attitude? No eye contact, no smile, no, geez, I don't know. You're asking me a direct question and I give you in response some roundabout comment. I want to go back here and see if I can actually play this link. There we go. Here, let's click this open. This is one of my clients from Dewey's Pizza in the Midwest. Notice this is a website that in fact says, hey, I want people who might aspire to do things beyond the walls of pizza. Here's our purpose. We nourish our community. We create exceptional experiences every day. We're next level. Here's our values, one at a time. And notice the values are listed and they're very active. We work as a team. We're open-minded, etc. We're efficient. There's no wiggle room. There's no, hey, we aspire or we strive. These are actions that we take minute by minute, day by day. This is the kind of behavior that I'm looking for. There are videos here which I'm going to choose not to play, but notice down here online, we believe every member being next level. If this sounds like the place for you, great. Click on hourly team members, employees. Hey, before your application, we want to show you this video. You need to see the video before you can even fill out the application. Purpose and values again. And oh, by the way, down here, if what you've read seems like too much, great, no worries. You'll find that it probably is. We're asking too much of an applicant for you. But if not, if you're inspired by this, please go on through, click it, I'm in, and you'll go right to an application. This filtering process, we find, actually clears the deck of about 10% of our applicants and opens the door to good attitudes, hard workers, the people that we're actually wanting to see. So an alternative to hiring at the last minute is we're always accepting applications, we're always interviewing, and we're looking for those attributes that track to and share our brand attitude, our culture of our business, okay? An example of this, if you don't have a big fancy website, you can literally take an application and type something akin to this cover. Basically, this is what you saw just a moment ago on the website. I did this way back in the early, in the late 80s, early 90s, by myself with one of my own restaurants, first time, and literally just stapled this on the cover sheet of the application. Goes, hey, before you fill out the app, take a look at this. Believe in living the values. Good enough isn't. You'll never hear that's not my job. If this sounds like the environment for you, great. If it doesn't, don't bother. Let's get you to another restaurant or another business that you might be more interested in. This cover sheet and me looking you in the eye and saying, hey, take this seriously, we mean it, literally filters out about 10 to 12% of the applicant pool that's just looking for a job, just needs to get by for the next month, as opposed to an inspired worker. Okay. 2 or 3 other pieces. The applicant is never gonna look better than they do at this moment. So pay attention to that. When they show up, were they on time? Were they late? If they're late, interview's over. If they're early, notice. Isn't that interesting? We've got some stuff for you to do if you're early. Hopefully that's the case. And in fact, we set up the interview so that, for instance, please plan on being here for an hour. And the interview itself may only take 20 minutes. But the first thing I'm going to do is greet you, notice if you're on time or not, and hand you some written questions, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But the applicant, regardless, is never going to look better than they do at this moment. They're never going to be more on time than they are for the interview. So again, rather than letting just somebody show up spur of the moment, to actually have an interview set up as an appointment, excuse me, never better than this moment. Questions, I want to ask questions throughout the interview and that are focused on behavior that support what are the behaviors of good attitude or good knife skills or great worker or hard worker. I want to break those compliments down to behaviors. We'll say more about that again in the next moment. Throughout the interview, a big headline is listen to accountability. How often have you and I interviewed folks where we look at the reasons they left, and job 1, managers were jerks. Job 2, they didn't give me enough hours. Job 3, oh, managers were jerks again. Notice, am I being accountable? So for instance, well, I've noticed the last 3 jobs I've had, I picked the wrong places. The managers coached to the negative instead of the positive. There wasn't really safety and sanitation protocols in place. Even with COVID, we're wiping 3 tables down at a time with a sanitizer instead of 1 table at a time and letting them air dry before we seat them, right? That awareness, again, of is the applicant making an excuse or are they actually being accountable? Pay attention to this, because if they're victims, if they're always making excuses or making some story up for why they can't perform, that's going to continue in the workplace with you. So watch out. On this slide, mini stage, right? In the old days, we would work, many of us are old enough to remember going in and working in a kitchen all day, maybe even multiple days for free, to show our willingness to work, to show our knife skills, to show our saute skills or trimming skills or whatever it might be. In the interviews, we can actually, an alternative to doing a full day stage, which is, oh, by the way, illegal, at least in the United States, we can do mini stage, do an exercise, have for a host, maybe it's I and my interviewing partner are your guests. Please seat us at a table. Socially distance. How do you get there? Tell us about the menu. First stage, greet the guest, right? Have I named the name of the restaurant, the day part, meaning good morning, good afternoon, good evening, my name, some sort of an action step. How may I help you? Welcome to the restaurant. Would you like to be seated? Do I have a reservation for you? It's so good to see you. I love your shoes. I love your dress, whatever it might be. What is the piece that we're actually expecting in that stage? Name it. For a bartender, have you free poured? Are you using a jigger? Have props set up and ready, empty glasses, a liter bottle set up with water, filled with water. Go ahead and free pour 3 drinks with your left, 3 drinks with your right. You've used a jigger, use a jigger, whatever the case may be. But those mini stage, I can talk to you all day long about your quote skill set. Suddenly say, oh yeah, no, I've free poured, I've used a jigger, whatever, great. Right behind you happens to be a bottle and 6 glasses. Please pour 3 with your right, 3 with your left, go. And we're going to find out very quickly if that person actually has those skills or not. With a bookkeeper, it might be, here's a list of 20 numbers, add them up, and we already have the right number, the right total. Did they get the right number? How long did it take them? With the host, how did they seat? Whether they have experience or not in any of these applications, whether they've got 5 years experience or no experience, based on what we call excellence, based on what they've said, how do they perform in the stage? And all of the words go away. The dialogue supports the actual exercise. Pay attention to that. A few minutes ago, I mentioned written questions. So we like in our interviews to, again, we'll invite somebody in, let's say it's a 1 o'clock interview. The first 20 minutes they're there, we're going to have them go through the purpose and values of the company, some written questions. This gives me an opportunity to see how they think, how they write, if they can speak or write legibly, if they can read. About 10% of the job pool applicants out there, even managers, about 10% are functionally illiterate. So if I'm hiring for a job that demands writing and reading, it's really important and imperative to see the capabilities of that applicant. These are 3 questions that we use as written to really good effect. The reason I like these as well is especially the last question. If I saw fellow team members stealing, I would fill in the blank. I've seen answers from, I'd ask them to split it with me. I'd run and tell the boss. I would confront them directly. Whatever the answer is, depending on what your proclivity for the right, or your choice in the right answer, the answer to this question or any of these questions I can build on with verbal questions. This fellow team member stealing question actually becomes another filter question. About 10% of applicants in our experience, my experience, will leave the interview before I ever even spend time with them. Maybe they're a thief. Maybe they don't want to be confronted with some issue like this. I don't know. All I know is the data is 10 to 12% leave, which makes my life easier. So that's it. Describe myself in one word. What would the one word be? We'll see the relationship to this. I want people to think a little bit. If I could do anything in the world that I wanted and there was nothing holding me back, I would do X. This question has been really potent for us over the years. So it's a regular question. Actually, all three of these questions are regular questions we ask in writing. Gives the team member or the applicant an opportunity to think a little bit, feel a little bit, before they respond. We've actually seen retention show up because somebody applies for a job as a runner, but maybe they want to become a bartender, or maybe they want to become a cook or a manager. We end up with a line that says, well, gosh, if you really want to do this, this is how serving or running or serving as a host or bussing tables can actually guide you to this, so that the question doesn't stand alone, it integrates to something else. Written questions. And Renee, if there's any, you're tracking chat, I know if there's any questions, feel free to interrupt me if there's anything that's popping up as a question. From a verbal questions place, they're again equally similar, few questions that I ask rather than a long written list. So of all the restaurants you could apply to, why us? Why not George's? Why not Sally's? Why us? What stands out? One of my favorite questions to ask verbally is, even though I believe devoutly there's not much common sense, is ask that question, hey, define common sense for yourself. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being 100% common sense at all time, rate yourself as having common sense. It's frightening how often people answer that question with a 4 or a 5 or a 6. In my experience, once they've defined common sense and then they score themselves anything less than a 7, in the interview, say goodbye, thank you very much. They're going to end up being not a very good hire. So really interesting, thought-provoking question. Define common sense for us. On a scale of 1 to 10, score yourself. If you've got written values, if you've got a purpose statement or a mission, my invitation is use those as an active tool. Tell me about a time at work in previous jobs that you've been challenged. Great question, fine, ask many, many times. Take a look at the values that you've seen from us. Which values apply to being challenged at work? How would you apply those values? Adding the values consciousness to the question, you're going to be able to see the applicant not just fill a job requirement, but actually how they think, how they anticipate, how they move forward into next questions. In my verbal questions, I can also follow up with any of the written questions that we've got. Usually I shared with you 3 written questions. We usually will have maybe a questionnaire of 5 or 6, 7 questions, not more than 7. I just, again, want to see what you're thinking, how you're thinking, and how your ability to translate the written questions. Same thing with verbal. I'm going to ask 1 or 2 questions, and then I'm going to go to an exercise and see if you follow up regardless of your experience. I want to see how the applicant shows up. One thing that I haven't addressed with you, you'll likely notice that I've been talking with alluding to we. I'm going to recommend that you interview on a regular basis. If you've got high turnover, maybe you're interviewing weekly. If your turnover is relatively low, maybe you're interviewing every 2 weeks. What you're not doing is do not wait until somebody gives notice. Actually keep interviewing. We're always looking for A+ players. We'll say more about that in a moment. Interview with a team. I like to work in partnership. So one person is leading the interview, another team member is learning from the interviewer, paying attention to the applicant, noticing their body language, noticing their reactions, and we can do a debrief, we meaning the interviewers. I interview with you, ask, hey, what did you notice with this applicant, so that we're always training good interviewing skills at the same time that we're doing the interviews. This last word, passion, on this slide, I want to share with you. This is an often missed opportunity. Somebody says they love playing guitar, or they love Italy, or they went to school at Johnson High School or Johnson College, whatever. And I immediately go, oh man, I play guitar too, or oh yeah, I went to Johnson. Instead of showing your hand, my offer is, whoa, pay attention. The applicant just opened an amazing door for you. If they say they love playing guitar and you play guitar, instead of joining them and celebrating, the opportunity is, say more. What do you love about guitar? Oh, so you play. What kind of guitars do you have? Suddenly I've got something similar to restaurants. Whatever my passion point is, oh, you went to Johnson & Wales in Denver, so did I. I know the campus, I know the instructors, I know the curriculum. I can go deeper to find out what you actually know, or if you're just blowing smoke. So as opposed to giving away the passion point, like playing poker, don't show your hand. Instead, join them and find out more. Likely what they share in confidence about their passion point, whether it's travel, music, food, pets, dogs, cats, whatever it might be, horses, whatever your passion points are, join, go deeper on that, as opposed to giving away the answer. Here are the guideposts that lead everything for us. I want to only hire A+. If I do not count on common sense, I count on definitions of what great work means for us, then I know what A+ is. I want that. So I can only hire A+ if I'm interviewing on a regular basis. So the opportunity is, keep interviewing. Do not settle for a C player or a B player even. Settle for A+. Tied to that, a maybe is a no. You know this as well as I do. There's something that doesn't quite sit right. 6 months, you just go ahead and hire them. 6 months later, you wish you hadn't. Maybe 3 days later, you wish you hadn't. But it's much harder to get rid of this team member now once they're in the door than inviting them to go somewhere else before we ever bring them in. So a maybe is a no. Keep interviewing. So again, interview in a team, I'm only going to hire A+, a maybe is a no. Beware of this. So many times we hire maybes and inevitably it ends up, oh my God, I wish. This leads us to trust the balance beam. Literally like a teeter-totter. Oh my God, I love this applicant. Ask the question, why? Is it just the color of their eyes, or is it they're making eye contact? Is it, oh, I love their smile. Well, wait, what's behind the smile? So if I really find myself loving the candidate, go back to neutral and say, why? What is the behavior? How is this person, not just out of habit or they're mirroring me, how is this going to be a great candidate? Same thing if it's a no. Oh my gosh, I hate this applicant. Time out. How come? Go back to neutral. What is it? I'm looking for good attitude. Oh, what is good attitude in terms of behaviors? They're not making eye contact. They're not smiling. Oh, their single word was happy. They define themselves as happy, but they haven't smiled in the last 10 minutes. There's a real question for you to ask. Hey, I noticed you described yourself in one word, and your one word was happy, and at the same time, in the last 10 minutes that we've been sitting here, you haven't smiled once. That's data. It's not a criticism. I'm interested. Say more. And I can actually have a real conversation, which leads us down to the fifth part of the 5 core truths. So trust the balance beam. Go back to neutral. I really like this person. I really hate them. Go back to neutral. How come? What's the data? Oh, I really like them, and here's the reason. Okay, great. Let's go to the next step. I don't like them, given. Let's stop the interview right now. Thank you very much for your time. At this point, it's clear that criterion that we need on our team are not being met. Thank you very much. I'm going to invite you to stop and walk you to the door. Answer questions only after all our questions are asked. Most of the time, you and I, this goes back to those first 2 circles that we saw on the slide deck. Most of the time, we give away the answers. A smart applicant walks in the door and goes, wow, nice build out. Well, this is interesting. It's small. Yeah, it is small. It gives us an opportunity to work really closely as a team. 10 minutes later, you go, so how do you like working in the kitchen? I like small quarters, and I like working, it makes teamwork that much more efficient. And you and I don't even realize that we just gave away the answer. So I'm going to answer questions only after all my questions have been asked. If I need to think for a minute, or I need to give the semblance of outreach, I can ask, hey, what questions have you got? Well, how many shifts a week would I be working? Instead of answering that question, which most of us do, turn the question. Well, based on what you know about the restaurant business, how many shifts would you expect to work? If you have no experience, how many shifts a week do you need to work? Ask the question back and see, experience or not, how the applicant would respond. I'm going to find out much more from them than giving them a whole bunch of answers. Obviously, at some point, I need to talk to them about job requirements, minimums, uniforms, etc., pragmatics. I'm talking about something different, actually the Q&A of the real way the restaurant works. Ask the real question. So earlier we were talking about guitar or sailing or Johnson, whatever it might be. The real question would be, well, what about playing guitar do you love? How does, and because legal questions need to be applied to work, how does playing guitar and the discipline of practicing show up for you in a job? Tell me about that. How do knife skills apply to guitar skills or painting skills or whatever the passion point of this person is? Ask the real question. Classic question that we hear asked often is, well, gosh, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm going to say that's a throwaway question. It's just a check off. If you settle for the answer to that, you haven't done your job. The real question is, why that? Say more. Of all the things you could do, what you really want to do is go into fashion. Why are you applying here at the restaurant? Or you want to be an actor? Why is it you're applying in my restaurant? Ask the real question. Just very briefly, here are 6 things that it's illegal to ask about in the United States. I can't ask your age or your birth date. I can't ask what year you graduated from high school because that relates. I can't ask you about your marital status. Are you married or not? Are you pregnant or not? Boom, how many kids do you have? However, if the applicant brings up children, I can then ask, gosh, how many kids have you got? If they bring up marriage, I can bring up that topic. However, those issues must be brought up by the applicant, not me. Specific disabilities. I cannot ask you about a disability or any issue with hey, do you have anything wrong with your back? I can't ask that question. Here's what I can do. I can have my job description defined out in behaviors and performance. I can have ADA restrictions, weightlifting, climbing stairs, working outdoors, lifting, setting stuff down, moving from one place to another. I can have those ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, verbiage written out. And then the magic question becomes, is there anything on this job description you're unable to accomplish? That is a legal question, and it pays to have a job description written and ready in an interview. If you have questions about that, feel free to be in touch with me. We've got examples of those kinds of applications written. Medical conditions obviously connect to any disabilities. It's also illegal to ask about any non-job related questions. However, I can tie sailing, guitar, skiing, name a sport, activity, football, whatever, to how those skills or disciplines would apply to my job. I can actually allude to those passion points through how they would show up at work, and those questions become legal. So that said, my last point for you in the moment, and I realize I'm going very fast, I want to leave you with the headline. That everything you see is an interview. The magic question is, would I hire the behavior I just saw? If the question's yes, if the answer is yes, celebrate it right now. Coach to the positive. Keep doing that. If the answer is no, course correct. Everything's an interview. Once that applicant's in the door, everything's an interview. Use the interviewing skill sets you've got to celebrate and course correct performance for any given shift in the moment. So that said, I wonder what questions, if any, you've got.
Thanks, Rudy. So we did have a question that came in here. It's how do you build the confidence to question your interviewees, especially with the happy but not smiling scenario?
Interesting. So that's a great question. Where we train our team is again to think about behavior. Even more specific is data. What is the data? So what are the behaviors of good attitude? Most of the time we walk around thinking about good attitude, bad attitude, oh, you care about your work or you don't. A smile is data. A smile is a behavior. Not smiling is a behavior. So I don't need to be aggressive. I don't need to be criticizing you. Hey, I'm interested. You mentioned happy is your self-describing word. Here's an irony. I noticed that you haven't smiled once in the interview. Tell me about that. So my motivator as the interviewer is interest and care, not policing. So the difference, the ability, the courage, if you will, to ask about a smile is because I actually care. I'm interested in the smile. I'm interested in the direct eye contact. It's a great question. The subtlety of I care actually enough to ask instead of I'm afraid to ask.
Perfect. Thank
Other
you.
question? Yeah. Any other
So
questions?
we are at the end of our session. We don't have any additional questions coming in, so I do
Okay.
encourage the audience to reach out to Rudy directly. It takes some time to dissect the information. So if you have any questions, please reach out to Rudy. And thank you again, Rudy, for being with us today. This has been a
Renee,
phenomenal session.
thank you so very
Yeah.
much, and congratulations for putting on such a great event in Florida, and all the best.
Thank you. And thanks to our
Thanks so
audience.
much.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.